Don in London, hello. It's September the 8th. September the 8th. My video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour, or both substance and behaviour. My addictive substance at the time, the one which gave me the most problems, was alcohol. So I am an alcoholic in recovery. But equally, behaviour, excuse me, or any other substance can come to mind. So, alcohol drove me to distraction and insanity in the end. But it seemed to take a long time. And it was the very first drink which did the damage for me. That is, the first drink that I ever had, alcohol, changed the way I felt. It fixed something about me, and it turned out to be fear. Fear of something I didn't know or understand. But generally, I just had fear. And when I had that first drink, everything changed. I felt a lot better, a little bit more joyful, a bit sleepy, a bit out of it. And that's the one I remember, but apparently I had had one before, given to me by my granddad, much to the annoyance and anger of my mother. It made me sick. Now, if I'd been aware that it was going to make me sick, and even worse, an addict to the alcohol in later years, maybe I would have thought differently about taking that next drink, which fixed my feelings. And indeed, they did get fixed, or obliterated, or simply stopped me from feeling the pain of life. And the same goes for behaviour, trying to be with the right people, in the right place, doing the right things and having the right things. Consuming madly to try and feel right about my life. So work hard, play hard, find the right girl, be in a relationship, and wonder why it always kept falling apart, either because I couldn't relate or they couldn't relate. Either way, and I often picked people who drank alcohol like me. So we had two difficulties, two people with feelings which weren't really understood. Although we both, and often I felt love of others, but not very much love for me, which meant I never really understood deep affection coming back my way. So I might have learned how to love other people in the hope that they would love me, but when it came to understanding how they loved me, I was pretty clueless. So that's what drink ultimately did for me. It did do for me in the end. So these days I don't drink one day at a time. I'm very lucky and fortunate to be sober and finding out what life is all about. How to love, be loved, and do something useful. Be useful in my own life to myself and other people. And whatever our career or job or occupation or hobby or whatever it happens to be, if it's useful to us, then it's worth cherishing and understanding why we like it and love it. And that goes for people more than anything, how to love people and be loved back, and useful in that way. Why do I say these things? Well, for years and years and years I had a great big misunderstanding about life, what life was about. When people asked me, would you like to do this, or please do this, or just do it, I said yes, because if I did it, then people might actually acknowledge my worth and value. So I often valued myself in a way which was quite inappropriate for me, by the amount of money I could earn, or as how hard I could work, or be the right person in the right relationship at the right time. And I've often said in recent days, right girl, right place, wrong bloke, wrong man, because this man didn't know who he was or how to do various simple things like love in a way which was unconditional. It didn't require conditions in any shape or form. But these days I do understand that, and it's a love of people and life which is so important if ever we get back to it. So I'm very lucky. How did this miraculous situation occur? Well, not of my understanding to start with, but with the help of a lot of people. So family, friends, community, you name it, kept me alive long enough to get to a place where I could accept some help from people who knew how to be sober, so I could then learn how to live life in a more fruitful and loving way. So this thing of emotional sobriety being key, and then if we don't take a drink, physical sobriety is assured in many respects, but emotional sobriety is contingent on living in the moment of now, coping with now, our feelings fitting with what is going on now. And I needed a lot of help and support to find the direction in which I could go. And that support and help has come from a fellowship, and that fellowship is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. I never speak for anyone or the fellowship of AA. I speak about how it helps me on a daily basis keep sober and live life in the moment of now, where my feelings fit what is going on. So how did this wonderful transference, if you like, or how did it happen? How was I transformed from an alcoholic into a recovering alcoholic? Well, the story of the fellowship is well known, and I'm going to share what it means in a practical way and how the steps work in action on a daily basis on these videos. So I share here the AA preamble, which is on this little card, and I read it out rather than recite it, so I remember why the words are important. And the AA preamble is shared at the beginning of any meeting of AA I ever go to. And then inside it has the 12 steps of AA on one side and the 12 traditions on the other. Sorry, I'm not doing this very well. And on the back it's got a meditation which helps me out in any moment of time. It's called the Serenity Prayer. But it can be just an exhortation to good conscience or a meditation on what I can and cannot do. Depends on your belief system, and each person has their own belief system. So this thing of fellowship, let me just go through the preamble, what it means to me. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. So the common problem is being an alcoholic and how to get into recovery. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. So that's it, the only requirement. There are no rules, laws or regulations to govern you in fellowship. It's a matter of personal integrity, I guess. We learn how to be ourselves in fellowship. But don't forget, everybody's learning something new every day. So some people come in very angry and resentful, want some rules and regulations, but there aren't any. And they say, well, what's it all about then, if all you do is share experience, strength and hope? Well, the answer is exactly that. We share experience, strength and hope about how to be in recovery. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. So if a person has a bit of spare cash, only enough is required for rent, tea, coffee, biscuits and literature, so people have something to refer to, which helps with sobriety. So we're not a cash-rich society, never ever. We have enough to get by, a prudent reserve of a month or two at local level, and I have no clue what the organisation globally has. Probably next to nothing. Next to nothing, meaning enough, just enough for now. Oh, I better keep on going with the preamble before I take a sip of coffee. One of the addictions I haven't given up. Yep, still working on it. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. So whilst the fellowship is not allied to anything, every single person inside it is. So we share experience, strength and hope from our backgrounds about what's working in our lives. So you'll hear people from all walks of life with all sorts of beliefs and affiliations, causes they support and causes they do not support. But as a fellowship, the fellowship is only there for sobriety. So we hear a lot and we take from those who have similarities in outlook and practicing the principles of sobriety. We learn from them, and if something doesn't seem to apply to us, it doesn't apply to us. So we get freedom of choice around these things. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So that's the primary purpose, to stay sober and help others. And what we found, or what I found, is if I help another person, they probably help me, clarify in my own mind something about what makes me tick too. So it's mutuality of support, and always we are trusted servants of the same size. So although there may be some service commitments to keep things ticking along, trusted servants do not rule or govern. They are trusted servants, same as anybody who comes into fellowship. We work together in unity, service and recovery. But nobody's in charge of another person. That's in the first tradition, which I've covered in the past. But it's always good to remember it, because if you're coming in as a newcomer, the last thing you want is somebody on your case who thinks they know better than you. And the simple answer is, we all live in one day, this one, and sometimes we have an answer which might be helpful, and sometimes we may have what seems like nonsense. And if you feel it's nonsense, treat it as such, but don't necessarily discard the person forever. Because on one day we may be full of knowledge which is helpful and wisdom which works. On another day we may be full of the usual BS that we can all come up with. It all is contingent on how real life is working for us. And sometimes real life can really make us feel angry and resentful. And we share about it simply because another person who may be in the meeting or that group has some words of advice or a suggestion or two. But they will not tell you what to do, I hope. But of course people can misunderstand how the society and the fellowship works, willfully because they want to be in charge of something, or because they want to control and manipulate something, which might be you as well, but they may not know they're actually doing it. So we are all learners in the spiritual side of life, which is coping with now. Yes, so an emotional spiritual program to keep us sober for one day only, this one. And that can be quite a difficult task, as I've found looking at some of my notes from previous years. And I suffer a bit with other conditions besides being in recovery, one of which is type 1 diabetes, which throws up all sorts of other complications, and also clinical depression. So on the emotional physical level, if it hadn't been for sobriety, I wouldn't have been alive long enough to get type 1 diabetes from a virus, late onset type 1 diabetes, and also not be properly diagnosed with clinical depression, which sometimes feels like bipolar to me. But I'm not an expert in clarifying my particular ailment, other than there are very highs and somewhat protracted lows if I don't follow professional advice. So fellowship provides me with sober, and for anything else, medical, emotional or physical, I need professional help, or I'd be dead. I was nearly dead because I was suffering from malnutrition for a year. As one general practitioner suggested, most of my maladies were imagined and in my head. For a whole year, malnutrition. I could have got a second consultation, but I was frightened of upsetting the National Health Service. And how strange is that? A second opinion is not a bad idea, and that applies to everything we hear in fellowship. You'll find second, third, to the nth degree opinions about how to be sober. You only need to find one which works, the one which works for you. So I share from AA literature this book, Daily Reflections, which I hope will be online on the main AA website soon. I imagine it will be, because the AA Big Book is online, and so are the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, which is what makes recovery and fellowship work. So that book is quite important to me, because each month it covers one of the 12 steps, so September being all about step 9, and making restitution and amends where we can. without doing further harm to other people. It's about sweeping our side of the street clean so we can keep on sweeping it and we don't get so much debris piling up day after day after day. That's step 10. We'll come to that in October. So anyway, for today, it's quite a lesson for me, because last year at this time I was quite angry and resentful, but I'll talk about that in a moment. It makes me feel ill to feel that way, I have to say. But the AA Daily Reflection for today. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. That comes from the big book, and it's talking about God. And the thing about God is, no human is God. So the good news is, if we get wisdom from other people, the idea that God works through others works for me, and truth, love and wisdom seem to be the characteristics of looking outwards to find the truth, be able to love people, be loved back, and keep on learning about life. So when Gandhi said God is truth, love and wisdom, or something like that, I may have embellished it somewhat or undermined it a bit, I don't know, but truth, love and wisdom as a higher power works for me greatly. So I don't have a problem with the word God, but all my life I oscillated between believing and not believing, depending on the company I kept. Yeah, that's not very good, is it? So, a bit of a people pleaser, but these days I don't need to be. I can be myself. At the same time, care deeply about people and have affection for people. So, I could not manage my life alone. I had tried that road and failed. My ultimate sin dragged me down to the lowest level, that's my drinking, I have ever reached, and unable even to function, I accepted that the fact that I desperately needed help. And I've been on death's door myself more than once before I actually said, okay, if I can't solve this, maybe I do need some help. I stopped fighting and surrendered entirely to God and or, in, as I see it, conscience and living to truth, love and wisdom. Learn from those around me. So whatever our understanding of what God may be in our life, it can only be in one place, which is now. It can't be anywhere else. It has to be now. So the wisdom of the universe is really at my disposal if I ask for help. But as a stubborn, defiant alcoholic, I couldn't make that transition of letting go my self-will and willpower, which was failing me day by day by day. I still thought I ought to be able to sort it out on my own and stand on my own 2 feet. And I couldn't. Only then did I start growing. That's true. I asked for help, and people were in my face, and so much so it was overwhelming to start with, because some of the help was absolutely wonderful, and 1 or 2 people trying to help me were actually trying to help themselves with some free labour, but I only found that out a bit later. And there are always people who will take and not give a thing, but that's just life. So we don't have to throw the whole lot out just because 1 or 2 people can be seen as unhelpful. And I nearly did. It nearly drove me to distraction and got really, really angry. So, yes, God, truth, love, wisdom, as you come to understand it for yourself. Whatever works for you, as long as you know you're not God, and asking for help is okay. A higher power had to save me, or had to have saved me, because the doctors doubted I would survive. Well, that's also true of me, but that's because I couldn't stop drinking, and I wanted to be dead. I have forgiven myself now, and I enjoy a freedom I've never before experienced. Yeah, I've forgiven myself for being human and being able to make mistakes, and know even at my best it can be the worst experience for other people. So I have to keep on looking at my conduct in an open, honest way, and not judge the rest of the world as being against me. The more I learn, the less I know, a humbling fact. But I sincerely want to keep growing. I enjoy serenity, but only when I entrust my life totally to God or good conscience, as you come to understand for yourself. And this is why I say it's your understanding. If it's simply conscience or good conscience, it's connected to the good of living, I suspect. Well, at least I know so for me. As long as I am honest with myself and ask for help, I can maintain this rewarding existence. Just for today, I strive to live His will for me soberly. I thank God that today I can choose not to drink. So it's a freedom of choice not to drink so the rest of life can happen. And as it says here, today life is beautiful. And that's where I started this morning. Today life is beautiful. And it can be a bit challenging that life can be beautiful on a day like today. So for this morning, today life is beautiful with an exclamation mark. It's quite dark out, early morning, cloudy, and early commuters buzzing about, which is true. I've just shut my window so you can't hear it. Days like these sent shivers through me in times past. 6 a.m. at the health club. I drive across London to the city, be in the health club for 6 o'clock, work myself physically very hard to deal with the feelings of anxiety and fear and trepidation that always seem to dog me in my final years working in the city of London. Work for 8 a.m. and home late evening, and sometimes the home late meant, I don't know, anything up to midnight, because I was working on something, problem solving, trying to find solutions, decision making, all those things, implementing, supporting, wearing different hats in different organisations, doing different things. Basically trying to help people and organisations be successful. But then I would drink to oblivion, pass out, and it happened day after day. That's how it used to be. Now, sober, each day is different. I can say yes, I can say no. Today fear is less. No need to put a brave face on. And no ego, well, less ego. Need a little bit of ego just to catch my attention sometimes, or trip over and feel the anger of it. So today, enough fear, enough courage, faith and confidence to be me today. And even now, even though I've gone through all these years of being sober, sometimes the day can be quite a challenge, and last year was quite difficult. So this day last year, a lot of anxiety, fueling fear, anger and resentment in me. I felt isolated and alone with no help. It made me feel very unwell. And when I look back, it was me trying to do it all alone and not asking the right people for help. Just because I was right did not help one bit. Letting go and asking the right people in the right places for help was torture, because it meant I had to wait for them rather than be impatient and get it done my way. Organisations may say no to us, but yes to the right person in the right place with the right thing. And that thing in an organisation is often power to make a decision or influence those who would otherwise say no. And that was a hard learning, because all my life I'd fought the corner for everybody else, but when it came to fighting my own corner and somebody said no to me, the outrage was apoplectic, doesn't matter, beyond anger. You know, it was heart attack country with stress, because I wasn't going to get my own way, even though it was rightfully my way, and it still is, but I had to have some help. You know, somebody in power with a position which could exert a lever on those who were reticent and refusing and telling lies. So even me, I have to say I'm extraordinarily grateful for those people who have the levers of power to help me when I cannot help myself. Anyway, so from previous years, and this is why it's pertinent today, I don't feel that fear or horror, but I still need a lot of help professionally. Why should I accept the unacceptable? This is me. A bit of a do today, and I think it was last year or the year before. I live as a tenant in a very comfortable flat, which I pay for, yet the management organisation for the landlord are making my life difficult, ineffective, inefficient and totally unacceptable to anyone with half a brain, that being me with half a brain in this case. Yet I keep my cool and persist with generosity of heart. Well, I feel like I was probably lying a bit here, because having said ineffective, inefficient and totally unacceptable doesn't actually spark off serenity in anyone. But I did have generosity of heart, because I did give them every opportunity to dig a great big hole for themselves. And that's not nice either. It wasn't generosity of heart at all. It was my ego stressing to me that it was important that I got my own way. Actually, I felt really ill this morning, and this is true back then, as resentments were looming, and I know my expectations are resentments under construction. I expected just the decency of a reply some of the time, and there are other people in my family who are having the same difficulties with other organisations currently. Yeah, and I know resentments lead us, in the case of sobriety, to step 10s and in my part in matters. Let go and let those with power do something. So I've exercised my power and voiced my feelings and observations as I see them, and I then let go and let those with power and authority deal with it. If they can, they will. If they cannot, they are in the same place as me, powerless over people, places and things which are not possible. And it's got worse since then, because there's no financial support for some of the things that need to be done around London and the general maintenance of the place. Money's run out. Well, actually it hasn't. There is some corruption going on, but I won't go into that here, because I want to keep out of it. I don't want to go down that street. I don't want to be a crusader today. Anyway, going on from before. I'm saying it because this is how it was. I've spoken to 2 people about this who are not involved, and we have smiled and seen the upside as well as the downside. Will it kill me today? Question mark. No. So let go and let go some more, or I let ego rising, or I get ego rising and everything goes mad in my head. And the God problem happens. I act as if I know best, and I don't on my own. I act as if I know best. I'm not God. I don't know best. I don't know how best to solve many of the things which are procedural and custom and practice around how you get things done in certain parts of London. Because, if somebody has some power, they will use it against you if you start to try and fight against what they can and cannot do. If you ask them, can you help me? And explain, then they have power to choose. But if you say, I know my rights, and this is my right, they may say, no, it's not, just because they can. So it's how we approach things. Being right doesn't help. Being right does not help at all. It's how we go about things. So I need fellowship. So I need a fellowship meeting to still the mind, and I did. Talk if I feel the need, and today more likely to remember and simply listen to what others are saying and doing. By the time I go to bed tonight, I need to simply realise that people are doing the best they can with what they have. Sometimes the best is their worst, just like me, and just how I used to be. Step 9 and step 10 help me daily. Do no harm, forgive everything, and be at peace with the world today. Most days. And, being human, if we didn't have the hard experiences of why should we change, we wouldn't change, would we? So if defiance and stubbornness made us very successful, it's very hard to give up stubbornness and defiance, especially if you're hidebound in an organisation which needs those particular skills right now to say no. No, no and no. Anyway, amends to self. As we live to good conscience and sober life improves on a personal level. It does. Amends to self. Our amends to self is this. As we live to good conscience and sober life improves on a personal level, we still encounter dishonest, unwilling and closed down ego-driven people, just like we can be. Then we have to learn what to do when we feel we are asked to accept the unacceptable behaviour of others. Walk away, confront, conflict today, question mark. I don't know the answer until we get to that moment in time. But I don't like conflict. I don't want to be stubborn and defiant. I don't want my ego rising up. And it's often better to ask in a way which shows empathy rather than being assertive. It's how can we find a way forward rather than I know a way forward. It's you do what I tell you to do. So, and that's not assertive, that's aggressive actually. I feel let down by how things are. It's not your fault, the person I'm talking to. but it would be helpful if we could find a way forward which would help. Even that seems contrived. It's all a question of degree, of knowing the facts more than anything, and how can we move forward from here together, or not. If it's just not possible, I have to let it go. Some things are just not going to happen. So there we go. We ask for help, sharing what we have done with the sanctuary of anonymity. This is us in fellowship again. When we ask for help, sharing what we have done with the sanctuary of anonymity, so we may find the truth of who we can be today. I can be a good person, working to good conscience, or I can be an awful person, working to my own self-interest and putting the rest of the world down as hapless and stupid. It won't work if I do that. Indeed, it will never work. Amends to be made to those we have hurt and harmed by how we live, and not doing further harm to others. That's what step 9 is all about. Amends take many forms, not usually of our choosing as we live so today. And the amends is about me, my behaviour, my side of the street, and not about them and what they do, in retaliation for any bad behaviour on my part. I can expect it, can't I? So we don't need wars in our life on a personal level. We need love, peacefulness and serenity. And sometimes that would be very hard to find when everybody's not feeling that way and life is hard and difficult. And as I know, my standard of living is going down and down and down, but not because of anybody else. It's just the general malaise that is around us. That's just the way it is. So as long as I have my needs met, wants forgotten. There's so many things I want that I don't need. And actually life is a lot simpler the simpler I keep it. So the less possessions, the less I am into materialism of any kind, because I was the perfect consumer and always ready for a bit more debt. Needs met, no debt. Wants, more chance of debt. It's difficult because we get ourselves into binds, and I had to lose everything, absolutely everything, emotionally and physically, I guess. Except that last heartbeat. Somehow I kept that one going. Or rather, a doctor did. Not me. So we can get to where we get to, but in recovery we can actually see the positive side even in the painful times. It's not about endurance, it's about acceptance of life on life's terms. Often life is difficult, harrowing, tragic, but it's also joyful, full of fun and happiness, as it can be if life offers those opportunities. Sober it does for me. Excuse me. And when at the end of these videos I talk about the serenity prayer, again, God, I'm not God, so I don't control anything as far as I can see. Or maybe I do. Freedom. I have freedom to choose given what my life situation is. So I checked my blood sugars this morning, had the right injections of different types of insulin. Hopefully my endocrine system will be on track as well, so all the chemicals, normal chemicals which work in the head, will work as best they can with the deficit of clinical depression, which is managed professionally. As and when, I haven't been for a checkup for ages. I need to do that. Reminder to self. Anyway, that serenity prayer is can do, can't do. Wisdom to know the difference. I can do good things for myself. I cannot change anything for anyone else, really. I can offer suggestions or advice, but never control or manipulate other people. Part of my thing I learned in fellowship. Yet, all about us, people are wanting their own way. So the serenity prayer does really help me, or the meditation, and I don't mind using the word God. I still will never be able to describe God to you or to myself. If I could, I would be on equal status, and I'm not. I'm simply a learner. So to God or in good conscience, whichever works for you is what works for you. The can do, can't do, wisdom to know the difference. I can do, change my attitude and behaviour. I cannot do, can't change your attitude and behaviour. I can't change it. Might be able to influence it a bit. But if you don't want to, you won't, or they won't. So know what you can and cannot do in sobriety is a pathway to serenity, peacefulness, even though we can be red hot with anger when we start thinking about it again. I don't feel red hot about last year. I just feel the sickness coming over me of reviling my powerlessness, when I should be saying to myself, thank God I'm powerless over this situation, otherwise the world will be my way and people will shoot me. The serenity prayer to God or in good conscience: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That works any time of day, in the moment, and just for today.